All right, and we are recording. Hello, everybody. My name is Leemor Ellman, and I am excited to be leading this webinar. Help My Kid is Obsessed with Sugar. This is my third in a series of 3 master classes, and my goal here is to give you and your kids strategies for creating a healthy relationship with food and their bodies. And in a society that makes it a tough goal, I'm an anti-diet parenting coach and certified intuitive eating counselor. I coach women and parents to feel neutral about their bodies and food. I want women to stop passing diet culture onto the next generation. I also design and deliver workshops to workplaces, universities, and community organizations. My ultimate goal is to get you to trust your kids with both broccoli and candy. I consider this talk and my coaching essentially eating disorder prevention. Dieting is a gateway to eating disorders. Unfortunately, eating disorders are on the rise and affect children at a younger and younger age every year. I just want to put out a disclaimer that I am not a substitute for medical care or mental health care. I'm not a doctor and I'm not a mental health professional. And so seek those professionals out if you have questions that I have not answered. I'm also not a nutritionist. So if you are really concerned about the amount of sugar your child is eating or the types of food they're eating, you can seek out an anti-diet pediatrician or a nutritionist. All right. And I'm super excited to invite you to my free food freedom calls so that I can offer you specific suggestions to get you and your kids in the right direction in terms of sugar and with your kids. So I have a Calendly link, and I encourage you to please contact me via Calendly and put a time on the calendar for us to meet. I offer free 1-hour coaching sessions for people who are interested in what I do. I want to explain my personal life before we get started with content. So I dieted for 30 years, 30, unsuccessfully, just like 98% of dieters. My weight went up and down, which is an expected outcome of dieting. I would restrict, eat well, exercise well, and then stop. I just couldn't sustain it. I felt like a failure most of the time. I never woke up in the morning and said, I just love dieting. I love starving myself and exercising in a way that feels awful. Nobody ever says this. Nobody starves themselves and over exercises because it feels amazing. So obviously, it goes without saying that my mental health suffered. Little did I know that my failure actually had nothing to do with me. How could my failure about my body have nothing to do with me? That was a weird idea. But as I dug deep over the last couple of years, I discovered this insane system of oppression we are living under called diet culture, which is the system of oppression that tells us that the most important thing in our lives is the size and shape of our bodies, especially for women, but it impacts all humans. Diet culture had literally been eating at me, chipping away at my very essence, asking me to shrink my body as much as possible. An impossible feat. I had no idea that 98% of people who diet gain the weight back within 2 to 5 years, and 2/3 of those people gain even more weight. I had no idea that if I was going to keep the weight off that I so desperately wanted to keep off, I was going to have to starve myself forever. I didn't understand why the restriction cycle that all dieters experience was really a thing. And I was sure that I was going to be the one eventually to find a way to be immune to the cycle of restriction, to the yo-yo dieting, to the on and off dieting. One day, a few years ago, I literally stumbled upon an anti-diet approach to eating called intuitive eating. This was a tsunami of learning for me. I learned that intuitive eating is the right we are all born with, the right to honor our hunger, feel our fullness, and find satisfaction in food. It is an anti-diet approach to eating that focuses on our internal cues rather than external cues that dieting teaches us. It's about developing trust in your body around food. It took me a while, but now I feel completely free with food. I worked for a few years with some amazing coaches, and I developed a community of people who gather together to be anti-diet. And I consider this a huge personal victory and one that I just want to share with you and give you the tools you need to get to the place of freedom that I've gotten to. I discovered that my body is not a problem to fix, but rather diet culture is, and that my body can exist in any form without apology. I learned that sizeism, weight stigma, weight bias, fat phobia, fat discrimination are all terms that our society has not yet fully accepted as major social justice issues, just like racism, ableism, sexism. All of this was profound and life-changing. Then enter my kids. My kids are 15 and 17. Fairly soon, I started freaking out over my kids. I had been encouraging dieting, restricting what they ate. No, you can't have another muffin. You had one for breakfast. Pressuring them to eat healthy foods. Carrots are good for your eyes, so have some. Making them wait for treats. No, you have to finish your dinner before you eat dessert. And I assigned morality to food. Broccoli was good for you, candy was bad for you. And maybe the worst of all is that I talked about my own desire to shrink my body. It wasn't overt. It was based on confirmation bias. It seemed lovely at times and not really over the top. It seemed fine. But actually, was it? This kind of light pressure is not fine for a lot of children, especially sensitive ones. I learned that this was the exact opposite of intuitive eating because I was not encouraging my children to listen to their bodies, which is the hallmark of intuitive eating. Instead, I was encouraging them to listen to me and my body. I saw signs I didn't like in them. I saw that my tweens were really begging for candy. They paid a lot of attention to sugary substances and to candy. They sneaked candy. They talked about body dissatisfaction a little bit, and they worried about their clothing and how it looked on their bodies. It dawned on me that this had to stop. I worked hard to stop all of this over the last several years through some amazing coaches, most of which was through cognitive behavioral coaching. And my approach to coaching is cognitive behavioral. And in all of this life transformation, I discovered that coaching was the key for me to make change. And support and community were key too. I learned how to coach myself, and this, in essence, is my goal for you, to learn how to coach yourself. That if you have difficulty with food and body image, you can trust yourself to find the answer within you. But this takes time. It takes a mindset shift. And I want to tell you about the mindset shift that it takes. So, before we continue, I'd like you to open your workbooks to page 2. And I want to talk about the 5-step process to ensure your kids don't develop a strained relationship with sugar. Number 1, educate yourself on sugar. Your attitude as a parent towards sugar can actually and is likely creating more harm than sugar itself. 2, neutralize your language. Talk about all food, including sugar, in a neutral way. There are nutrients in almost every morsel of food. 3, practice the division of responsibility, which is Ellen Satter's work. Ellen Satter's division of responsibility says that your role is to provide a variety of foods, including sugary foods, in a nurturing and safe environment. And your kid's role is to decide how much and whether to eat what you provide. Number 4, model a healthy relationship with food. Show your kids that all foods can fit into a healthy diet. Enjoy a variety of foods yourself, including those that contain sugar, without guilt or shame. And I know in diet culture, this is tough. I have been there. And number 5, encourage mindful eating. Teach your children to pay attention to their hunger and fullness signals. Encourage them to slow down and savor food. This is a foundation of intuitive eating, but not all of it. So a large part here in these 5 steps is to understand your own relationship with sugar and to understand how your relationship with sugar can be impacting your kids' relationship with sugar. So in order to change your relationship to sugar, first, you have to change your thoughts about sugar and then move on to how your thoughts affect your feelings and your actions. Once you change your thoughts, you're able to change your feelings, which then changes your actions. So this is thought work. This is mindset work. And for some of you, this might sound like a lot of pressure and a great deal of worry. That's okay. Feel the worry, acknowledge it. Don't attach to it too much. It can take time. This is where a coach comes in. This is where I can come in. And during this process, what I tell my clients that is most important is to practice self-compassion. Talk to your brain. Talk to yourself. Literally say the words, I understand you. I care about you. Tell yourself these words. I know this is hard. It's hard, and you can still work at chipping away the part that doesn't feel good. You can hold those both together. All right, so I'd like to dive into step 1. Step 1 is going to be about diet culture and healthism. So now turn to page 3. Diet culture. So first, let me say that dieting, I want to define dieting. Dieting is essentially intentional weight loss through food restriction or exercise. Diet culture is a powerful system of beliefs that worships thinness and equates it to health and moral virtue. Diet culture promotes weight loss as a means of attaining higher status, which means you feel compelled to spend a massive amount of energy and money trying to shrink your body, even though the research is very clear that almost nobody can sustain intentional weight loss for more than a few years. Diet culture demonizes certain ways of eating while elevating others. This is the same for sugar. which means you're forced to be hyper-vigilant about your eating, ashamed of making certain food choices, and distracted from your purpose, your pleasure, and your power. Diet culture oppresses people who don't match up with its supposed picture of health, quote unquote, which disproportionately harms women, femmes, trans folks, people in larger bodies, people of color, people with disabilities, and the list goes on. And it damages both your mental and physical health. This definition of diet culture I love, and it's by Christy Harrison, who wrote the book Anti-Diet and who really revolutionized the field of anti-diet health. So I want to take some time to talk about healthism. And I'd like to ask you, what is health? How do you define the word healthy? It's a tough one to define, right? What does healthy mean? Well, I want to talk about something called healthism. And healthism is a concept that a lot of people simply do not talk about. Healthism judges people according to how healthy they are. Healthism and diet culture are inextricably linked. In healthism, the belief is that health is the sole responsibility of the individual. A person should work harder in order to be healthy, just like any social justice issue. We are better if we are in better health. But how can anyone decide this but ourselves? And plus, there's a ton of different kinds of health: physical, cognitive, psychological, spiritual, biological, mental. Healthism completely disregards the many other determinants of health, including inequality, access to healthcare, trauma, systemic oppression, genetics, sleep patterns, mental health care, our social lives. These are the social determinants of health, and they impact our health much more than food and exercise. But the thing is that there's an entire industry that is set up behind healthism in order to benefit from the shame and guilt associated with not having good health. According to whom? As people are becoming aware of the harms and biases of diet culture, they're shifting their obsession from weight to health. But in my opinion, this is just another classification system that incorrectly elevates certain body types as morally superior to others. Just like in diet culture, with health culture and wellness culture and healthism, shame, guilt, and discipline is motivated by the belief that you are superior if you eat the right food, you exercise the right way, and you avoid sugar. So here's the thing. Let's talk about what exactly we feel about sugar in society. I am convinced that we demonize sugar, and I'm not the only one who thinks this. I want to take you on a little bit of a history ride. A study was published in 1922 that sugar could lead to the creation of the quote unquote neurotic child, which then gained popularity in the 1970s when treatment for hyperactivity was being explored in children, and they connected hyperactivity to sugar consumption. But finally, 25 years later, there was a meta-analysis of many small studies that explored the relationship between sugar consumption and behavior. And essentially, what those researchers found in that meta-analysis is that sugar does not affect behavior or cognitive performance of children. The strong belief of parents that it does may be due to the expectancy that parents have and the common association parents have with hyperactivity and sugar. Wild, right? So there's this common misperception about sugar that is woven throughout our culture, throughout diet culture, throughout healthism. I love the way Virginia Soul Smith writes about the demonization of sugar in her best-selling new book, Fat Talk. She says, quote, "Parents and caregivers have been told that our job is to teach kids to eat healthy, and we interpret that to mean as many fruits and vegetables as possible at whatever the cost. And we live in a culture that informs us early and often that sugar is the worst thing we could let our children eat. None of this is true. Demonizing sugar doesn't serve children well. It might feel right to say, don't eat too many sweets because this is what we've been taught in diet culture. When a food is demonized, kids, all humans, want it so badly, and thus the cycle of restriction is born. I can't have it means I have to find a way to get it. And kids are super smart and know that their parents don't want them to eat sugar. So they sneak it, they carry on, they try whatever tactic possible. They have temper fits to get more. Now, it's true that sugar can give us a boost of energy because it's processed quickly in our bodies, but it's nothing like hyperactivity. That boost of energy is nothing like hyperactivity. It's parents' confirmation bias around what sugar is doing to their kids. Now, I'm not saying eat sugar whenever you want it. That's not healthy either. Well, but maybe it is. You need to decide if it's psychologically healthy. It's up to you. I respect your choices. But I want to talk about the cycle of restriction. And I'm going to share my screen so you can see the cycle of restriction here. So in the cycle of restriction, parents, this is the candy edition. Parents fear that their child will overeat. See that? And parents limit access to candy. Thus, the child feels restricted. And then the child sneaks or binges on candy. Parents think the child has no self-control with candy. And then the parent fears the child will overeat. And the cycle continues. Okay. So the question a lot of parents, though, ask me is, well, what about sugar being addictive? We hear that all the time. Or they ask me about food addiction in general. So here's the thing about sugar addiction. Again, I'm going to read you a few paragraphs from Virginia Soul Smith's new book, Fat Talk. Here she goes. It's not that delicious food has no impact on our brains, but it doesn't induce a total lack of control in the way most people think. Eating pleasurable food does induce a dopamine response, says Sumner Brooks, an eating disorder dietitian in Portland, Oregon, and co-author of How to Raise an Intuitive Eater. Dopamine is also known as the feel-good hormone. It surges in our brain whenever we experience pleasure, and defenders of the sugar addiction model cite this as evidence because the sugar dopamine response can look like the response seen in the brains of people using narcotics. But we also get dopamine responses from purely benign activities, like seeing a puppy, hugging a loved one, or feeding our babies. So Although the common perception is that we can become addicted to sugar, it's not really. Our studies and research has shown that it's not really the case. All right, so that was step one, educate yourself on sugar. I'm going to go through the next 4 steps faster than I did step one. Step two is neutralize your language. Talk about all food, including sugar, in a neutral way. So there are nutrients in every morsel of food, even chewing gum. A lot of the time, for families, removing emotionality from the equation when it comes to sugar is the way to go. Place food on your table and don't talk about its value. Instead, simply encourage kids to eat. You can mention, maybe not over dinner, at other times, that all food is good food. Your goal here is to remove morality from food. A lot of parents will say, I'm so happy that you're eating healthy food, Johnny. But this can send a message that perhaps you don't want to send. It's not that they are good, that you're pleased that they're eating healthy food. Instead, just treat food as there, that it's on the table, that it holds no moral value. And don't make eating sugar a gigantic thing. Just normalize it. Yes, eating sugar can be fun, but make it the same way eating anything else could be fun. Now, this is scary, this approach, to a lot of parents. Won't my kids just eat everything? Maybe for a short time. A lot of parents narrate what their kids eat, especially when they are younger. This is not something that can benefit children. It places more emphasis on what they eat than you'd like. So, reintroducing sugar into your home as a substance, as a food that doesn't have any moral value attached to it, can be stressful, because I bet you're worried that your kids are just going to eat sugar night and day. And this is why you need a coach like me. Because if you want your kids to change their relationship to sugar so that sugar isn't exciting and sugar doesn't elicit this obsessive reaction in children, you're going to have to go through the intuitive eating process and do the part of intuitive eating called habituation. And this is the part in which you introduce your kids to sugar and you let them eat whatever you want whenever they want it. Again, this is tough. This is stressful. And without a coach, I'm not really sure if I would recommend it. But with a coach, we talk back and forth about the experience of doing this. And over time, you start to see that your children become less interested in sugar and in all the other foods that you have deemed bad, or junk foods or play foods. When all foods are on the same playing level, on the same playing field, there is no food that gets children excited anymore. Food just becomes food. Step number 3, practice the division of responsibility. This is Ellen Satter's work, as I said. Your role in the division of responsibility is to provide a variety of foods, including sugary foods, in a nurturing and safe environment. And your kid's role is to decide how much and whether to eat what you provide. This is tough and stressful. Family style is the way to go. Present the food and then leave the decision-making of what they're going to eat up to your kids. This is structure, but not control. There is a difference. There is nurture in structure, but in control, there's usually restriction. Again, with a coach guiding you and preparing you, helping you understand the division of responsibility, it can happen and not be as painful as it possibly sounds. This worked for me and my family and many of my clients. So as you see on page 4, permission plus abundance equals discernment. So the idea here is that when you give somebody, a child, permission to eat whatever they want and an abundant amount of it, they become discerning. They decide which foods they want to eat. But when you are controlling what they eat and pressuring and threatening, they are not going to decide what they want to eat. Instead, they're going to eat it because they can't have it. Because that is the underlying message. The underlying message is don't listen to your body. Listen to me, the parent, because I know best. I know what your body should eat. But nobody knows what a child's body should eat other than the child. Number 4, model a healthy relationship with food. Of course, we're living in diet culture, so this is probably the hardest step. Like I said, show that all foods fit into a healthy diet and try to eat a variety of foods yourself, those that contain sugar, without guilt or shame. It's easier said than done. I am so aware of this. And your anxiety about looking a certain way, about the need to be thin, really might be getting in the way of your children feeling neutral around food. We talk about guilt and shame when in the presence of food all the time. Modeling is the #1 most useful parenting tool. Kids are looking for models. Stop talking about your guilt and shame around food when you're with your kids. Your kids want to know what is right and wrong, and they pick up on every nuance, especially those sensitive ones. Step number 5, encourage mindful eating. Teach your children to pay attention to their hunger and fullness signals. Encourage them to eat slowly and savor the taste of food. I recommend a hunger and fullness scale that I've given to you in your workbook. This scale will help you identify where you are and will help you connect with your inner sensations when you eat. I highly recommend using this scale at home with your kids. This is a way for you and your kids to tap into your sensations, and it'll help you with sugar because you'll decide what your body feels like when you're eating and decide whether it's a good time to be eating sugar. But most importantly, don't beat yourself up. This is hard stuff. This is new. It's a lot. Again, develop self-compassion. I like the work of Kristen Neff. Okay. In the rest of the workbook, I have prompts for you to fill out, body neutral parenting tips, recommended reading, and Instagram accounts to follow, including mine, which is Leemor_Ellman. Most importantly, you're not alone. Most people, most parents face much of this confusion. Most parents are stuck in diet culture's grip and have no idea what to do. You've come here, and so you're taking the first step. Please sign up for a free 60-minute coaching session with me. I will send you the Calendly link. I'd love to answer your questions. And my next masterclass will be on September 9th, 9/9 at 9 a.m. 9/9 at 9 a.m. Thank you so much, and I wish you tremendous luck with your kids and sugar.